In this video, we're going to look at the top 5 most common Starbucks interview questions. I'm going to help you plan fantastic answers that's going to land you a job with Starbucks. So the first question that always comes up in these sort of interviews is a simple question around what hours can you work? And actually, people do terrible on this question. So I'm going to show you the correct way to answer this. So you're going to start by being honest, because honesty is always an important thing in an interview. If you're caught out being dishonest, it's going to massively count against you. After that, crucially, you're going to show off as much flexibility as you possibly can, and you're also going to show them that you're committed to your role and that you're going to be there when they need you. So here's some fantastic things to get into your answer. So if you can work evenings or weekends and you've managed other commitments, that really helps because they are the more difficult times to staff a store. So once the schools are finished, it's very difficult to keep staff working on those shifts which overlap with the end of school. So if you can get in there, that really helps. Working the school holidays is a fantastic time because that's hard to staff. And you can also talk about your preference rather than saying, I can't do this. So if you have to say you can't do something, it's better to say, I prefer not to work this time, but I can be really flexible and sometimes I can be there if you really need me. So a great way to approach this question, it's difficult to do, but really try and focus on it, is focus on talking about what you can do and not what you can't do. Ideally, you won't mention at all the things you can't do. Just keep talking about the times you can manage. Keep it positive. The thing people do wrong on this question is they immediately talk about the times that they can't work, which is absolutely the wrong way to do it and puts a negative tone. And well, there's someone else being interviewed that can do these times, so probably we shouldn't hire you. So always keep it positive, focus on the can, and you'll do well in this question. Next one, how would you deal with an upset customer? And there's a simple and very powerful procedure that you can follow. And if you explain this to them with confidence, that'll really reflect well. So you can start by talking about de-escalation. That's a great keyword to get in there. De-escalation is where you're always looking to make the situation better. You're calming everyone down. You're not raising your voice. You're not going to argue back. You're going to calm everybody down. You're going to follow the company's policies. For example, if the person isn't entitled to a refund under the company's policies, i.e., you've served them a drink and they've fully consumed it and now they've decided that they didn't like it, well, perhaps under the company's policies that doesn't get a refund. And you're going to assure them that you're going to follow the company policy. You're not going to make it up on the spot just to make them happy. You're always going to follow the policies that are set down. However, while you're doing that, you're going to be empathetic to the customer and you're going to try as far as possible to adopt a customer's always right attitude. And lastly, you're going to talk about that you're going to positively represent the brand. While you're working for Starbucks, you are a representative of the Starbucks brand and you take that very seriously. So if you follow those 4 steps, get those 4 things into your answer, you're starting on a great route towards a fantastic answer. Question 3, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So you're going to start by talking about something that's credible. So we're working through the arrow. Credible, you have to actually believe what you're saying. If you're starting as a barista and you're saying in 1 year's time, I expect to be an area manager managing 20 Starbucks stores, well, that's not particularly credible. So you have to start with something that's credible and achievable. You want to map it out. So you want to say, this is what I want to do at this point. I'm looking to move here, move here, move here. And so you can put out those steps and you're going to take advantage of all of the training and development that Starbucks offers you. And so you might talk about wanting some more responsibility in the long term, that you're going to earn that responsibility. It's not an expectation. You're going to earn the right to have more responsibility. And you can talk about what the road is to one step above where you are. However, you might not see yourself moving up in 5 years' time, and that's absolutely fine. So you can talk about being exceptional in my role. So in 5 years' time, I want to be amazing in the role that I'm applying for, and I want other people to say, they're so good. If you want to see how to do this brilliantly, this is the person you have to go and shadow. That's your goal in 5 years, to be amazing at what you do. A bad answer is not believable There's no plan or no sort of logic towards your answer, and it doesn't fit with Starbucks goals. So you have to think about what the person interviewing you wants and make sure your answer fits with that. So the classic bad answer is to say, not with Starbucks. I only see this as a temporary job because I need some money now and I've got absolutely no intention of staying with the company. That's a terrible answer. So don't even go near that as an answer. Let's move on, look at question 4. What do you know about Starbucks? And this is a really great question to do extremely well on. Generally speaking, if you can go on and talk like an encyclopedia, you're just going to get full marks and they're going to move on to the next question. You're going to max out the score on that question. And the way to approach it is to start by mentioning things that everyone knows, then move out to some things that only some people would know, and then to show a really encyclopedic, amazing knowledge and that you've really done your research and your homework. Mention a couple of things that only very few people would know. And so I've given you some prompts to start your research. So, for example, you talk about Howard Schultz, who's the CEO, and how he drove the growth of the company. You could talk about its founding and its history in Seattle. You could show your knowledge of the product line, which is really powerful if you're working in a customer facing role. You can talk about it being a global brand. So, what countries are they in and where are they growing strongly? You can talk about the different types of stores. The majority of Starbucks are owned by the company. However, there are some that are licensed. For example, within a Barnes and Noble store, they would be licensed. And then there are a small number of franchise stores. So franchise means that it's owned by someone who's not Starbucks. It might be owned by an individual businessman, businesswoman. And so you're really applying for something slightly different. Or if you're applying for a Starbucks within, say, a Barnes and Noble, you're actually applying to Barnes and Noble to work as an employee of them in their Starbucks store. So understanding the distinction is very important. And really, one of the key differentiators of Starbucks and why it's been so successful is all about consistency. Consistency is really Starbucks' product. You know, if you get a coffee in Washington, DC, and you go and get a coffee in Austin, Texas, if you go to Starbucks, there's going to be a certain consistency, and that is what the brand sells itself on. And lastly, Starbucks makes a big song and dance about its corporate social responsibility. So if you read up on that and you talk about that, that will really impress them. So use the prompts. Big tip, read the annual report. That's where you get fantastic information. You can just find that on Google and use the structure that I've suggested, and you should be able to max out on this question, and that'll help you towards getting the job. Question 5, why do you want to work for Starbucks? And this is a question that's very likely to come up. And I've given you a little checklist to help you plan your answer. So you can start with the extensive research that we discussed on the previous slide. Show that you know exactly what you're getting in for and exactly what the company stands for. You're going to link it to your skills. For example, if you're really great at working with people and you love working with customers, link what you're required to do with the job and what you're good at. Link those two together, and that really paints a picture of why you actually want to work here. You can talk about all the development opportunities that Starbucks has for employees and how you see yourself fitting in with that and taking advantage of those. You want to link it to your interests. So, what are you personally interested in? If you have a passion for, coffee, and that's a big thing for you, talk about that. And most importantly, when you're answering why you want to work for a company, you have to show some enthusiasm. If you don't have any enthusiasm, you'll be marked right down and it makes your answers dry and uncompelling. And so a few more prompts that I've got for you is development. You can talk about Starbucks' ethical credentials, which they like to talk about a lot. You could talk about a referral. For example, if you've got a friend that works at Starbucks, you can talk about their experiences and how positive they've been and why that's encouraging you to apply to it. You talk about being a Fortune 500 company, so you want to work for a big company. Of course, talk about customers, customers, customers. They love hearing about customers in interviews because that's a really key part of the brand. And lastly, you can talk about brand affinity. If you love the Starbucks brand, that kind of matches up with why you would want to be part of it. And so lastly, to finish, I've got a bonus at the end, which is some questions to ask. So you should always ask questions at the end of an interview. If you don't ask any questions, it counts against you. So I've given you a couple of prompts of questions you might want to ask. And I'll let you pause the video and read through those in your own time. And the last one I've put is you should always ask one question that is directly relevant to something that has come up in the interview. It shows you're listening and it shows you're paying attention, and it shows that you're actively engaging with the two-way interview process. So finally, hopefully this video has been helpful to you. Best of luck with your interview at Starbucks. And lastly, thank you very much for watching.